Hello and welcome to HyzerMedia's coverage of the Warwick Open. Today we'll be taking a look at MP40 lead card front nine for the first round. I'm Dave Oster here with Wendy Oster, and today's tournament is sponsored by BS Bochantin Upshot and supported by our Patreon supporters. So thank you to both of them. Wendy, who's on our card today?
First up is Bob Shellenberger. Next up is Richard Sassaman. Followed by Kevin McAndrew. And to round our card off, Gary Kreb.
Well, it looks like an exciting card we have for our first round of the Warwick Open MP40. We will get started as always on hole one. Wendy, take us through it.
Hole 1 is a par 3 at 234 feet.
Most of these players will be throwing either a backhand turnover or a forehand shot, trying to get up to this blue basket. We are playing all blue baskets today from the silver tees. Any shots that go too far do have to worry about a steep slope behind, but we'll see how these players are able to handle that. Bob's starting off with a backhand turnover. Looks like it turned over just a bit too much. Landed somewhere near the silver basket. Should have a decent upshot. And Richard looked like he followed suit. And we'll see Kevin also going with a bit of a higher backhand turnover. Looks like he got the height right, and we'll have a 15 to 20 footer. And now we'll see Gary making it 4 for 4 with the backhand turnover in hole 1, and just gets it a bit too high. Hits that ledge, and he'll have a similar putt to both Bob and Richard.
There's a nice park job.
And look like a tentative little run there from Gary. Again, does have to be careful about the steep slope behind. Same thing with Richard there. This is a very hard basket to run. Although you do want to get started with a good birdie like Kevin does here. Get your round started off, and it's definitely dangerous because if you go down there, a par can turn into a bogey or even a double bogey real quick. So after Kevin's birdie, looks like the rest of these guys will just be tapping out their pars. And watch your head on the basket there, Bob. And we will move on to hole 2.
And hole 2 is a par 4 at 438 feet.
So these players are trying to keep it in the middle here, give themselves a second shot where they can clear the gap, get out into this field. Once they're out there, they'll probably be trying to get up and through this gap that the drone is flying through right now, or around to the left side. A bit more tricky, but there is the ability to go that way, and then land somewhere on this green with a precariously perched basket.
That was an early tree.
Yes, it was, and we can see once we get up close that these trees have been hit many a time. As we see Bob as well hitting these trees, they have many markings on them. And I'm sure every course that you've been to that has trees right off the tee, you've seen these same markings.
They certainly do.
And these trees are no different. As we're 3 for 3, let's see. What do you think? Think Gary's going to miss it?
I'm hopeful.
He's taking an extra minute.
And Gary gets through.
He does, and he's got much more distance, but he's turned it over, gotten through everything, and gone too far into the out-of-bounds parking lot long. So, almost the same kind of result as the other two. It's going to cost all 4 of these players a stroke because of the result of the throw, but Gary's will be a penalty stroke, but with distance, whereas the first 3 players will have no actual penalty, but basically an extra stroke because they're still trying to get as far as they would normally get. on their first throw. And we see they're still having issues getting out of this gap. Once you get off the fairway, in pretty much any wooded course, it's just either get back onto the fairway with a short pitch out, or try to pitch forward, but risk what these players are winding up with is just more tree kicks. And Gary's so far down the fairway, he has no option but to go to the left side of that island of trees. There is an out-of-bounds line to the left. I'm not exactly sure where it landed, but we'll see. If he is in bounds, there is a backdoor gap that he will be able to access the basket.
Sneaking in through the back.
And Richard with a great shot, cresting that hill, getting into maybe circle's edge from there. Kevin has no other option but a sky turnover to try to get up through. And it looks like he might be down by where Gary is. Oh, nope, he stayed up on top of the hill. Must have caught some trees. We'll probably have somewhat of a look from there.
Not bad.
Yeah, right about where Richard's shot landed. Could have a putt from there. And we see Gary did stay in bounds. And he has this backdoor pretty open line. Just needing to land on that green, which from that side is even worse because the basket is actually sitting on a pile of rocks or a side of a rock wall. So from that side it's a bit trickier to access it. We see Bob pretty much parks it right under the basket again. Richard fell down that rock wall that we see, and Kevin
Got the cage.
shorting it from no more than 12 or 15 feet. The unfortunate double bogey. And a bogey from Bob, even after a fairly well played hole after the initial tee shot. I think after their first 4 throws, it was going to be difficult to get a birdie, let alone a par, let alone a birdie. So these players getting bogeys and double bogeys, they're not happy with it. But from their first throw results, it's really not bad score. We'll see if they can improve on that for hole 3. What do we got?
Hole 3 is a par 3 at 265 feet.
And we're going to try to get up on top of this first or second shelf with their first throws. Most of these players probably won't be trying to get on top of the steep cliff that the basket sits on, but setting themselves up for their second shots where they're able to access it. So we'll see how these backhand turnovers, or maybe even a forehand, allow them to do that. So Bob got up on top of that first shelf that we're looking at here. There's kind of a 3-tiered shelf on this hole. So if you get on top of the first one, you'll have a pretty decent look at the basket where Gary just wound up after a decent tree kick back to the middle. That's kind of the second shelf where you'll have a much shorter shot to try to get on top. Similar to where Kevin just landed. Richard was asking for it to turn. It fades out early, but he does just barely stay on top of that first shelf.
Don't do it.
Oh, kicks off another tree. It looked like it had the power to get on top, but just not online.
Oh, sit. There you go.
And a lucky not roll away, because as you can see, this hole is uphill the entire way. So kicking off that rock wall could easily go all the way back down to the tee. A good third shot by Richard, getting up on top. Should have a pretty easy putt to save his bogey. And a fortunate not roll back down the hill for Kevin. He found some little nook for his disc to sit in. Gary with the good run. That was for birdie. And a great putt for Bob to save his par. And now a scary looking putt facing back down this cliff for Richard. But
he nails it.
He's no rookie. He's got nerves of steel at this point in his life. And the rest of these guys have pretty close putts to finish off this hole. Kevin's close, but he does have some tricky footing. We see him having to be very careful just to get down to his lie and then find some good footing to get back up and make his par putt.
Not a bad round there.
So 3 pars and a bogey, and we'll move on to hole 4.
Hole 4 is par 3 at 234 feet.
So tight left turn, downhill, speed control, and disc selection are the most important parts, other than not hitting one of the many potential trees, because there's also an out-of-bounds road long if anybody throws too far. So you see Bob got a kick, went left. He's down on the bottom section of this hole, but not quite near the basket where he wants to be. Gary gets an early tree. And Kevin going for a forehand turnover. Kicks the tree, makes his way down there. He'll have a circle 2 putt at it. But again, downhill towards that out of bounds, so he's got to be careful. And an early kick left for Richard. Just so many trees in this hole. Gary not able to get all the way down there again. He'll have a long downhill putt to save his par.
I think Gary needed that one to roll a little bit.
Yeah, almost maybe looking for it, but surprised it just sat way up on the top of that ridge. Oh, not good ground play. You expected that hyzer to go towards the basket, kind of got a counter skip.
Oh, and hits the top. Uh-oh. There you go.
Could have been a worse roll. Able to sit maybe 10, 15 feet away. Here's Gary for his bogey look. Ooh. Just low, maybe a little right side. Unfortunate double bogey. The distance on this hole is deceiving. You look at a 234-foot hole, you think, oh, well, there's no way that I can get any much more than a par or bogey. It's a difficult hole.
Those trees that get you every time.
That's right. So, a couple above par scores, and we'll move over to hole 5.
Hole 5 is a par 3 at 248 feet.
These players are going to be throwing a probably understable backhand drive up the hill, trying to just get it to go straight as long as they can, and then hopefully fade to the left where there is a bit of a flat spot for these discs to settle, kind of where Bob's disc just kicked to.
Mm-hmm.
So his was fading a little bit down the hill. That's where you don't want it to go, because once it starts going right, it's just going to keep going. And we see that from Kevin's drive. It's a pretty steep slope until you get all the way up there, and then the basket is settled on top of a big pile of rock formation, and most of these players can't really get parked under this basket, not because of their skill or their distance or anything like that, just because of the formation of the rocks. You can kind of hit the rocks, but from this distance you're very likely to kick or roll away. So they're really just trying to go similar to where it looks like Gary's heading, right to this flat spot. Good kind of tree kick right back to the middle. Give him a good look for a second shot. That's about all you can do. On your second shot, hope to hit something and nestle down right by the basket. Oh, and just a little bit too turned over for Richard.
It's awfully steep on the other side. I hope it didn't go too far.
Oh, I think that did sit. That was a good little turnover shot for Bob just to get up there. Looks like he's right under the basket. He seems to be making a habit out of that this round.
Here's another good one.
Yep, very similar shot by Gary. Ooh. Just right side chains. That easily could have gone in. Good par for Kevin. And the rest of these guys are settled right around the basket. And again, watch your head, Bob. And moving on to hole 6.
Hole 6 is a par 3 at 318 feet.
These players are aiming for this big tree right in the center of the fairway. If they're throwing a backhand, right-hand backhand, they'll be trying to hyzer just in front of the tree. If they get a decent skip, it will, head towards the basket a little bit further. Getting all the way up to the green on this hole as a par 3 is kind of hard because of the steep drop-off behind and the hill. So a lot of players, I think, are just going to be really playing for par on this hole. And even that is going to be a challenge with that hill behind the basket. Well, both of the first two players doing pretty much what we thought. Just a hyzer towards the tree, let it fade out down the fairway. Gary's getting...
You got some distance on that one.
Yep, quite a bit extra, a little bit of a skip. Now he is going to have a decision to make. He may be close enough in the area to run it, but again, having to risk going down the hill behind. Richard just a little tight, catches the inside tree. Oh, and just a bit too much power. Down the hill, rolls a little bit, and that's the danger. There is some stuff down there to catch your disc, but you're going to have a 25 or 30 foot comebacker back up the hill if you get down there.
Oh.
And we see Bob having the same result. So this hole does definitely have some teeth, and they're showing it. And that's more like what you're looking for. A nice slow putter, trying to slow down.
He ran it.
He did.
Oh my goodness.
Kind of best of both worlds. He got some metal, slowed it down. And Bob going for a forehand up the hill, trying to make it from there.
Oh, in and out.
And right side chains again for Richard. If he's adjusts just a little bit, he's going to be dead on from those 30-foot putts. So, and uphill. And we can hear a little bit of rain coming through today. This was the first round early in the morning. Pretty chilly. It warmed up as the round went, but also the ground was wet, still cloudy, still a little bit of rainy, so that just adds to the slipperiness of this slope and other holes, and perhaps this one as well.
Hole 7 is par 3 at 413 feet.
That's right, and the players are trying to crest this first hill, and this tournament being the Warwick Open around Halloween. The TD set up a graveyard right at the crest of the hill where a lot of these players are going to be aiming their discs It's not an out of bounds area, but it is just more obstacles for these players to get around. So once they get there, they then have a downhill fairway, a couple of trees to maneuver around and through, and an out of bounds parking lot long. So definitely lots of things to get around for this par 3 hole. Gary taking it just a bit wider and catches the second kind of set of trees. Gets a decent roll down the hill. And Bob hitting the same tree as we saw Kevin hit. The difficulty with throwing uphill and then downhill is you want to just barely get it over the crest of the hill to keep the disc moving forward. Otherwise, you have to throw it high like we just saw Richard do, which is just going to let it hyzer out early and limit your distance. So this is a very well-designed hole, and I'd say a very difficult par 3, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Kevin throws a sky hyzer around the outside. I think he caught an early tree and fell down. He should have a couple 100 feet towards the pin still, maybe 120. Bob also getting caught up in that tree. And this is the graveyard that we were taking a look at. Doesn't seem to be too much in Richard's way, but could certainly be in his mindset as he throws.
Oh, it looks like he's safe.
And does just check up in time. That was a difficult ask for that disc going downhill towards the dead bounds parking lot. But luckily he will have a putt back up the hill, which he's had the last 2 holes.
And this is true.
He'll be able to get it this time. And a great drop on a dime by Gary. Up and over the tree. Landing it 4 feet from the basket, rolling just to about 12 feet.
Looks like these guys are just laying up, which is good.
Yeah, definitely not, again, one of these holes that you want to run too much. Just a bit too far for Richard that time. Maybe he's tired of hitting chains. He said, "I figure I'll just put it under the basket and tap it in this time." So Gary taps in his par. And we'll see the rest of these guys right around the basket will be tapping in their bogeys. I think a bogey on this hole really feels like a par, and a par feels like a birdie. Again, like I said, all the obstacles, there's not a lot of players getting birdies, if any, on this hole. So I think these players aren't too upset with their scores, and they'll move on to hole 8.
And hole 8 is a par 4 at 362 feet.
Throwing from the woods out into the field, forehand or backhand turnover to get out through this gap that the drone is flying through right now, landing in the field on your first shot, and then you have an out of bounds island you need to either go over or around to a pretty wide open green once you do get up there. So we'll see how these players handle it once they get out in the field, but they have to get there first.
This is very true.
That looked like a good line by Gary, just a little bit tight. See if the backhand turnover works any better.
Oh, that's a beauty, Kevin.
And yeah, absolutely. All the way out there, plenty of distance out of the field. You want to get a good distance out of the field if you can. It sets up a better angle for your second shot. If you're just barely out of it, obviously you're not in the woods anymore, but you're a little bit pinched off with that sets of trees and the out of bounds little island there.
In my opinion, hole 8 on this course just is the epitome of the whole course. half woods, half just out in the open. It just keeps going back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good representative hole of the whole course. A little bit of out of bounds, some woods, out in the open, par 4, and challenging. It also works as a good transitional hole because most of the holes after this are pretty open, and eventually we go back into the woods for a little bit. So
Let's get you ready.
that's right. And we see some of our players, most of our players are still in the woods, but they get out in their second shot. Kevin did get out in his first shot and was able to take advantage of that good positioning, and he is parked on the green. Richard challenging that OB and gets right through there, and I'll have a 15-footer for his par. Gary in a similar position. He's got there in one shot, so this is going up to park for his birdie. Hits that tree
Oh no!
and doesn't come down. That's a pretty steep slope. A lot of discs will hit and come back down out of bounds, but unfortunately Gary was not able to have his disc do that. That tree he hit was inbound, so he can take it a little bit closer, and it helped. Instead of being at the bottom of that hill, he's able to come back up to the top and have a putt, and got the bogey instead of the potential double or worse. And a nice birdie by Kevin.
Very nice.
It takes 2 pretty good throws to have a tap and putt that short for a birdie on this hole. And Bob did pretty much the same thing except for his first shot not getting all the way out into the field, so he takes his par. And we move on to the last hole of this front 9.
Hole 9 is a par 3 at 385 feet.
And most of these players will be taking this outside route where the drone is flying. There is also an inside route if you want to challenge these trees and the out of bounds island. But we'll probably see them play this more like a par 4, out to the right, up to the top of the hill for their first shots, and then try to land it on the green in their second, and then tap in for a par 3.
He got up. He did go through the tree, but he got up top.
Bob with an ideal line for this first throw, right by the silver basket. Looks like it won't be too much in his way. Oh, and Richard just a little tight. Looks like he hit that tree. I'm not sure if he went out of bounds. I think he's safe just short of it. For her second hole in a row, Gary hits a tree and out of bounds. This time, fortunately, kicks back far enough to not take the additional stroke. And we see Richard was also short of the out of bounds, but from that position, all you can do is continue to pitch up that hill because of the sharp left-hand turn for your next throw. And we saw Kevin go into the woods there. That out of bounds line does follow the woods all the way down, so unfortunately he will be taking an out of bounds stroke and take it back from that rock wall.
Oh, very nice.
And Bob with a nice par. That's pretty much Perfect way how to play the hole. Get up the hill, down to the basket, tap in your par.
Oh my goodness.
And these baskets are not liking right side change today. A little bit of frustration from Gary. He
I
knows
saw
it.
that too.
He knows that should have stayed, could have stayed, but just the unfortunate. Spit out right. And we see Richard and Kevin both with the double bogeys. And I think Kevin's still trying to find his disc. But that is it for our front nine. Lots of color in this card. But this is still our top four for now. We'll see how the back nine wraps up with this MP40 division. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to HyzerMedia. And we do have a Patreon if you'd like to see more exclusive content. And we do have monthly disc giveaways, so the link for that will be in the description. Other than that, we will see you on the back nine.